Okay, I might just kick off now. I have done a sound check a few minutes ago. A few of you have mentioned that you can see and hear correctly. Uh, if you can't or you're having problems with audio or video tonight, just jump into the chat or the question panel. Uh, the content of the evening is around becoming a local area expert in unfamiliar or interstate markets. As a community of DIY property investors at Ripehouse, we tonight will be talking through some research, some learning, and discovering ways we can improve our due diligence process, our research process, and then our daily research and implementation to really thrive and be able to invest in these remote markets with confidence. If you've got any questions for tonight, I will be jumping in at the end. So save them up or ask them throughout, and I'll jump in and dedicate a chunk of time at the end for addressing those questions individually. The slides tonight and the recording will be made available for those who stick around until the end tonight. So there's a lot of notes and graphs and figures and numbers throughout the slides. So don't fear, they'll be passed through at the end. Ripehouse is a community of DIY property investors. Tonight we'll be going to be focusing on how to firstly assess condition of remote property. So if we are looking interstate or in unfamiliar markets for the absolute prime opportunity, the most upside, how can we assess condition of those properties successfully? How can we become local area experts in those remote markets? And then looking at what's happening in Q3, and we've moved through Q2 now. What's going to be happening in July? Let's look for some high growth markets and then use some tools to improve our daily research and process in finding information and then using that to our advantage. So I'm going to be looking at how we can leverage that information on a daily basis to potentially negotiate and buy below market or at fair market value, and how that can be integrated into your process of negotiation with the agent. So, as I say, jump in at any time with any questions, and I'll get to those at the end. Just jumping forward a little bit about myself. My name's Jacob Field, and I founded Ripehouse in 2011. I've been an investor for over 10 years. I bought my first property at 19. Now I own property across Australia. Some I've never visited, I purchased with sight unseen. I'm a DIY property investor. I really focus and empower and prefer to empower myself with learning and knowledge and a network around me of like-minded individuals to really thrive and move forward and empower myself with that knowledge in doing that. And I've made mistakes in how I've gone in my journey. I've flip-flopped between strategies. I've overcompensated and changed tact. As long as that awareness is there and the sense of always trying to improve and not make the same mistake multiple times, I was able to move away from 9 to 5 work a number of years ago. And as with you, our property investment journey is ever continuing. And Ripehouse is a beautiful way I can use my background and my professional background with my love of property investing. Jumping forward, we've got a lot of friends online tonight from Property Observer, so welcome and thank you for joining us. I'm really excited to take you through some of the research and learnings and insight we have here tonight. At the Ripehouse News Desk, we've recently been featured on Property Observer in an article with Jonathan Chancellor, the editor there, titled "Sydney Investors Turn Towards Brisbane." In our Ripehouse community of investors, there's a lot of polarised Sydneyites who have been either made some recent capital growth as an investor or are now looking to invest in other markets and spread their eggs into those markets. And another segment of investors that are from Sydney who are now priced out as an investor into a lot of the markets and are now looking at where's going to be moving into the nice next part of the cycle. So that was covered there in Property Observer. I've also just been recently interviewed, not last Sunday, the Sunday before, with Kevin Turner at 4BC, Property Talk, Real Estate Talk. That was a great interview about Brisbane for people in Brisbane. And I was also just featured in the Mercury here in Tasmania. I'm actually from Tasmania. I've been living in Sydney and moved back here to be with family last year. But that was a great feature around the Tasmanian property market down here that was recently in the paper. We've just launched a new feature which I'll be taking things through tonight in our research software, which is a core part of Ripehouse, and they were a custom overlay. So yeah, I'll mention those when I come up to it, but just sort of that's recent news, and we're always trying to improve and develop the tools and the research that we do here. So just keep a flag against that. Yeah, I guess what we're going to be here tonight and talking about, it's you hear a lot of information in the media, and you might follow individual experts in the field, and you come across a region with a lot of upside, a lot of potential. You might not have invested there, you might not be familiar with it. How do you drill down at a suburb level, find individual suburbs with great upside, and then in those suburbs, how do you become local area experts for those suburbs, and how do you find streets, areas, pockets of property that are really going to thrive for your particular strategy, and then individual properties on the market in those streets. So that's what it takes to become a local area expert. We have to work out what makes these foreign locations tick. What are the growth drivers, the demand drivers? Why are people moving there and living there? Why do they like living there, and exactly which streets do they prefer? What negative impact elements, crime, public housing, a longer distance from all the key amenities, or clusters of owner-occupiers, or clusters of very high tenant demand, or concentrations. What are the potential negative impact elements in the suburb? And let's put a dollar value on those things. So positive and negative elements, let's understand how that relates to value and perceived value. Let's find in these remote markets, let's try and work out ways of finding investment sweet spots, and knowing that if we've got a certain strategy, those sweet spots might be different. So a flipping strategy might be in an owner-occupier enclave near the beach, while a capital growth strategy may be over near the amenity cluster, and high tenancy demand, high rents may be perfect for capital growth or cash flow. So there may be different areas of a suburb depending on your strategy. I guess all this comes back to, if you're looking at investing in a suburb that you've been living in all of your life, you're an expert in that suburb without maybe even realizing it. You know the growth drivers, you know the demand drivers, you know the positive and negative impact elements, you know the sweet spots, and you can invest in that as an expert. So how do we gain that level of knowledge in these unfamiliar markets? So we're taking you through a bit of, this is going to be the topic of tonight, in how to do that, how to search across Australia for the absolute most upside, the markets with the most upside, and that are really going to move, and then how to invest in them with confidence. As a local area expert, we can have that confidence to compete in these markets with professionals, buyers, agents, and professional investors. Obviously going to be focusing on this potential, and with this mindset and our due diligence process fine-tuned, we can really thrive and negotiate successfully into these markets, and avoiding analysis paralysis. Next slide here, I'm just going to have a really quick summary. Jump into the Learning Centre at Ripehouse, ripehouse.com.au/learning. Constantly releasing new research and information via the blog and various ebooks that we publish. One is the Buyer's Guide to Property Investment there, which does talk you through that process of becoming a local area expert and what types of information you can glean about a property, and potentially how you can use that to negotiate and buy at or below market. The Know Your Purchase Strategy ebook there in the middle is about having clarity of your current strategy, capital growth, cash flow, or flipping, or any of the smaller, more advanced strategies, having absolute laser focus on that strategy and how to execute that at a suburb, at a street, and at a property level. We go into a lot of detail there, and making sure we are going to deliver on our primary strategy at our next property purchase. And we do a quarterly roundtable, so best of the bunch roundtable at a state, region, and suburb, then at a street and a property level across the whole nation. So look out for Q3 coming out in the next couple of weeks. It's a really nice heads up to see where each state and region is on the property cycle, and then potentially drill down to how we can invest in those regions. So look out for that. That's business as usual at Ripehouse. We're constantly investing in research and learning. We've got some amazing resources to do that around 3 years worth of for sale, for rent and sold data, but also the location of shops, schools, transport, public housing, high rent, high income, crime, all of these things, and we can map them to price and demand, and release some really interesting findings. So look out for that. Now, just to get us to think about how potentially positive and negative impact elements may affect price, property price, let's have a look at these three graphs around how proximity to transport, shopping and schools affects the property value. Now, according to our data set, we've done this research, we've looked at the correlation between proximity to each of these things and property values. We did this for metro areas, and we did it for other amenities like doctors' surgeries, parks, hospitals, cafes, restaurants. They did have some correlation, not an even correlation, and not a huge correlation. These were definitely the absolute big three. These are, sorry, I just had someone with a sound problem there. If any of you can still hear me and see okay, that would be great. And yeah, if you are still having problems, let me know. These really are the big three. We can see here at transport, the red line on each graph is the suburb average. This is averaged across every suburb in Australia in these metro areas. Right on the doorstep of transport is good, above average. It dips down to around the average sort of price expectation around the 500 metre mark. Out to a kilometre, 1100 metres from transport is the absolute sweet spot. You're not on the doorstep of a train station, you're in walking distance. With schools, 250 metres is a sweet spot. It drifts out to about a kilometre at around the suburb average, and then it drops off a cliff after that. On the doorstep of a school is just normal expectation, suburb average pricing. You might have traffic problems, you might have school noise, ambient noise problems. Shopping is sort of zigzags up and around the suburb average all the way through to 1200 metres, and then it drops off a cliff. So it's just a bit of an insight. Every suburb's different. Ripehouse helps you to see how this price relationship is different for each suburb, and it does map and show this for each property that's on the market. And it's just something to sort of show you now to start thinking about and to have at the back of our minds. Some negative impact elements. Public housing is a very big one. Public housing potentially adds volatility to a property and an investment. Looking at these numbers here, expect to pay 25% over the suburb average in price if there's 0% public housing in that street. And if there's 18% or more public housing, expect to pay 20% less than the suburb average. Now, once again, that's averaged across metro and regional areas. It is slightly different for each suburb. But you can avoid or seek out public housing. If you did want to buy at a lower price point, potentially have higher yields, and there is more scope then also to exceed suburb average growth by having above and beyond gentrification if public housing does disperse and gentrify. That's a higher volatility play, higher risk, but potentially higher reward. And you can avoid public housing, expect to pay a little bit more than the suburb average, but have more stable tenancies, lower vacancy rates, higher quality of tenants, and be able to drive rental increases in line or exceeding the suburb overall. But you might not have that outstanding or absolute upside in growth if the public housing streets do gentrify faster. So it's just a little bit of an insight in how to think about public housing and how to use it to your advantage or avoid and seek it out. Moving forward, this is all about becoming these local area experts in these suburbs that we're focusing on, so we can avoid spinning our wheels. We can really act with clarity and conviction and firm decision making. We have to have firm decision making and confidence so we can compete in these markets that have got a lot of upside with potentially other professional investors or buyers agents looking at those markets. We need to have our daily due diligence process really fine-tuned and working, and then using the right tool set and research to really make these clear decisions. It's all about, all of the information in the world is not worth anything unless we can actually leverage that and apply it in talking with the agent. So it's about, and I'll take you through in a moment, what sort of information can we find and see, and how can we assess the property's condition and comparables to be able to use that information to negotiate with the agent. Avoid the dead spots, only look at the properties that we're really interested in, and then potentially buy and negotiate at or below market for those properties. So one of the first things I like to look at, I did do a full webinar on this a couple of weeks ago. I do generally do weekly webinars on a Thursday night. I did a full webinar on assessing condition of a property and then finding relevant comparables, and then using that information, those comparables, the condition to negotiate. So I'm sort of doing a little bit of a snippet of that tonight, but we have to assess condition, and this point here on this slide is we have to assess condition for a property like for like in that suburb. It's completely irrelevant and very dangerous to compare conditions of property in a poor, average or good condition with properties in other suburbs. It has to be very subjective to that suburb. So that's just a bit of an insight. Obviously, the Mossman versus Mount Druitt example is Sydney-based, and it's a very extreme example, but it does get you thinking about the different types of condition. At Ripehouse, we look at properties in terms of quartiles. So you've got your median, your lower and upper quartile. That roughly those three numbers roughly translate, generally across metro areas and regional, population centres to poor, average, and good condition. So we're assessing each property and putting them into those three thirds. Poor is, unrenovated, very poorly presented for sale, bad street appeal, overgrown, all of these sort of facts. I basically categorise each of these key things. So street appeal, outside presentation, kitchen amenities, renovation, or if it's been modernised, bathroom, poorly inspected, presented for the sale on inspection, cluttered, very controversial or neutral paints and interior fit out and flooring and polished floorboards, etc. Extras like building material, is it asbestos sheeting or is it brick? Is it high set? Has it got the local heating elements in Tasmania down here, whatever it may be? Block size, layout, floor plan, how is that? We're basically trying to assess each of these things on a poor, average, or good scale. You can have your own methodology. You can put a 1, 2, or 3 in each of these columns, or you can just, and I sort of have got it down to a point where I'm just keeping a rough idea and moving it up and down in those 3 scales, and getting the property out at the end to one of those poor, average, or good condition assessments, so we can then find comparables that are going to be in a similar condition actually comparable, which is the key, because that's what we're going to assess fair market value on, and that's how we're going to determine if we have purchased at or below market. Just before I move on to the slide, I've got a couple of you coming through with audio problems. So there's 2 have put their hand up in the last few minutes. We've got Chris and Adeline. If anyone is obviously having audio problems, just pop it there in the question. If you're not, can you just also then say, yes, you can still see and hear me correctly? That would be wonderful. Just moving forward, I'm now going to just break into very quickly how we assess poor condition and some examples of it. Poor condition means a very different thing for low socioeconomic areas. You've got boarded up windows, you've got very original kitchens, flooring, very cluttered for presentation. Average, it's very tidy or reasonably tidy bathrooms, but very older condition. You've got controversial or badly presented for sale. High socioeconomic areas in poor condition are generally architecturally designed home of 30 years that hasn't really been touched as is, but still high quality fit out at the time. This just sort of as an example. I'm really just trying to get people thinking. Okay, I've got quite a few of you coming back here with notes around audio. Some of you are not hearing me very well, and one person's also dialed into their phone to hear. You can log into this via the computer and via the phone. A lot of you have come back saying yes, all good, thank you, and some people are still having audio problems. So definitely try the other devices, and a couple of you have just mentioned you've got 2 devices going at once, which I do apologise. GoToWebinar is a very large piece of software for doing these webinars. And Jason, I do apologise for talking too fast. I do get very passionate about this and property and talking and taking you through it. I'll try and slow down, but definitely we can look. I'll be sending the recording through to you and the slides as well. So this slide here is just trying to see and assess poor condition in different types of suburbs. I'm jumping in now to average condition in these suburbs again. Neat and tidy all across the way here, but then the quality of property and standard does need to change for each suburb. And then as an obvious example here, we've got good condition in low, average and high socioeconomic areas, and you've obviously got a very grand home here. And in the low socioeconomic area, which is investment class, high yield, etc., reasonably 10, 15 year old fit out in kitchen, bathroom, neutrally or nicely presented, polished floorboards, very tidy and high street appeal is sort of what you're looking at and how you'd assess good condition. So just a bit of example about how we can categorize property into those 3 buckets. Moving forward, so I really love and respect the work that Terry Ryder does at hotspotting.com.au. I think the level of research and detail he goes into his reports is outstanding. He has various reports around the top 5 Brisbane suburbs. He'll go into 10 pages of research and detail around those suburbs. In our conversations, I actually had a joint webinar with Terry yesterday. We had a great turnout. We went through some amazing content. And out of that, the focus has really moved towards Brisbane. It's in a great part of the property cycle at the moment. It was our number 1 suburb in the Q2 report at a state level. Southeast, Brisbane, Queensland area is outstanding in driving the whole state forward. So it makes sense to really focus in on that area as part of our next case study example here. In that area, a couple of names that have come up with Terry in our conversation. We looked at Logan City, local government area yesterday, another area which has been opened up with infrastructure and public-private spending is the northern area of Brisbane. The north side probably moved around a year ago and Christmas, which is sort of within 15k radius. Stepping out from that, we're looking at the Caboolture and the Morayfield area, which is, the government has spent money on developing and moving that rail line out to those suburbs, opened it up and increased access into the city. You've also obviously got the freeway there as well, which comes into the CBD. But this is another real hotspot from hotspotting.com.au. Definitely check out their reports, but it's also reiterated by our algorithms at Ripehouse. We assess capital growth potential for a suburb using sales volume increases, rent per week increases, days on market as stable and decreasing, and also rental volumes as stable. When we have a nice sweet spot where all of those are aligning, it generally shows as a buy indicator, and that suburb is likely to have capital growth in the short to medium term. Morayfield and the surrounding local government, or Caboolture and area around it, is all outstanding at the moment, as is Logan City and some inner city areas around Brisbane. So I'm going to be using Morayfield as our example tonight. We're going to be assuming we've got a capital growth strategy, but we do need, potentially cash flow neutral or positive. So yield is going to be important to us, but we have to have clarity of conviction on our capital growth strategy as our primary strategy. We're going to be dissecting Morayfield. We're going to be looking at it as a local area expert. We're going to be doing some comparable analysis on properties that we find, and I'll be talking about some of the information we can look at to negotiate and potentially purchase below market. We're going to be using the backbone of Ripehouse is our software, which is our research tool. It's map-based. It's in the version 3 now of our software. We launched version 3 in November last year. And I'm just going to now jump in and start working through that and demonstrating things for you. So just bear with me one moment. Okay. Now, I've just switched over screens there, excuse me. Please let me know if you can now see a map-based page, which is the screen here in Ripehouse, and that has switched over successfully. I will be talking to this. It has preloaded, so we've got very robust search functionality in Ripehouse. So you can basically search your catchment area. You click the search button up here in the top right-hand corner to start that search. You can select your crime tolerance. You can select your catchment area, whether it's Brisbane, price range, distance to CBD, and it will bring you back an ordered list of suburbs based on their capital growth potential. That is a tabular format. We can zoom a map out. Whatever is now in the map area, we can click on this blue toggle here as capital growth. And the darker the blue colour, the higher the suburb is recommended for capital growth. So we can hover over these. Caboolture's in the 83rd percentile for its score in capital growth, and Morayfield's in its 77th percentile, which I'm going to be using as an example tonight. So we can quickly see a cluster of blue focused in on here, which is very good. Anything that's not really shaded is 55% here. This is a very, very strong focus of blue and high capital growth potential here. We can actually also see cash flow suburbs, so high yield, low vacancy rates, and it's also focused around the same area. And we can see suburbs rated for their flipping potential, so purchase and sale in a short term, manufacturing profit through renovation. That assumes, so the darker the green colour, the more houses, the more owner-occupiers live in the suburb, and the larger the price spread between unrenovated and renovated. So these dark green areas are really prime for the flipping strategy as well. And the suburb overall is actually scored very highly for its flipping strategy and is actually recommended, even though the other strategies are also very well recommended. So we can see a detailed analysis of that in a moment. But, Ripehouse helps you order and find these suburbs for each of your strategies very easily. But at a suburb level, the reason, for the purposes tonight, we are trying to become a suburb level expert in Morayfield without visiting. There's 152 properties on the market. We can filter those, order them by days on market, discounting amount, price. You can see the full listing history of these properties, if it's been discounted by the agent, how long it's been on the market. First thing I like to do is get an idea of the price spread. So as I mentioned before, lower quartile roughly relates to poor condition, median relates to average, and upper quartile relates to good, off the plan or fully renovated properties. And now we need to get a bit of a feel for the price spread of these properties. So 278k through to 435. When we actually work and find the streets in the suburb that we're really interested in, we have to see how that price spread changes, because that's going to be our point of truth. That's what we're going to be negotiating based on that new price spread, and we're going to be weeding out all of the properties that are not relevant, and basing our value proposition on what is relevant is the key. So now I've got a bit of an idea of what properties are on the market. We can actually view all rentals that are currently on the market and all sold properties that have been sold in the last year as well. But I want to now get familiar with the streets at a street level in the suburb, which is probably something you haven't seen before, and the ability to do this. So Ripehouse is visual, it's map-based. I'm going to click on the public housing toggle here, and it's actually going to put overlays onto the map here. I'll zoom in a little bit here. Anywhere that actually has an overlay has public housing. Anywhere that hasn't got a border around it or in the shade of red doesn't have public housing. The darker the red, the higher the percentage of public housing. So Morayfield only has 2% public housing as it is, so that's very low. It's lower than the local government area and also the state. But these areas here in the dark red has 11.4% public housing. Over here near the shops, 9.2. So you can definitely see and seek out or avoid the areas of public housing, and you need to know how that sort of cluster of public housing might affect vacancy rates, quality of tenants, quality of property, and ability to get growth and rental growth may be compromised. Having said that, it is quite low public housing. We can see it focused around the key amenities in this suburb. Sometimes you go into suburbs that have 15-20% public housing, and they have street areas that have 80-90% public housing. It's different for every suburb. Definitely something to sort of keep an eye on, though. Let's now look at occupancy type. If we zoom a little bit out, so as I mentioned before, if you've got a flipping strategy, you might be looking and targeting the green areas, which are predominantly owner-occupier. The yellow areas are where tenants are demanding to live and currently live, and the darker the yellow, the higher percentage of tenants. So let's seek out, as a capital growth and cash flow strategy, the areas where tenants are demanding, and the darker the yellow, the better. Areas where houses are most popular. So there was an actual pop-up there when I first loaded the screen up that did mention that 4-bedroom houses are the most popular in-demand property type in the suburb. Let's look where they're located. Anywhere in the green is where predominantly houses are located, the most popular and in-demand property type. And anywhere in the yellow is where there's a higher than average number of units. But having said that, there's only 5.7% units in the suburb anyway, so it's predominantly houses. But sometimes you need to see the correlation. So generally, owner-occupiers might be preferring houses in some suburbs. In other inner-city suburbs, they may prefer 2-bedroom units. We need to know that correlation and relationship and keep it in our mind. We don't want to be buying the only house on a street full of units, and vice versa. We don't want to be left with an ugly duckling that people are not demanding in that area, and we don't want to be left with a property that tenants are not demanding if we've got a buy and hold strategy. So we need to get that right, and these toggles help you to do that. We can see sold price. So darker the yellow, the higher the sold price. Definite clusters down here in the owner-occupier area for higher price. Higher rent areas. I like to seek out for capital growth. I like to seek out high levels of tenants and also high rent. It's where they're demanding to live, and potentially that might be the areas of the suburb that are actually going to have the most rental demand when the combination of those two things exists. The darker the purple in this case, the higher the rent per street. Income. So, very high correlation here between the purple, higher income areas, and where the owner-occupiers are living in the suburb. We can also see exactly where the high yields are. So we've come into the suburb with 5% average yield, but this area down here in the yellow actually has over 10% average yield. So we can definitely seek out where the higher yields are in every suburb across Australia and seek those out. So if we've got a 7% minimum yield figure, we might have generally, ruled Morayfield off. We won't be able to achieve that, but using these tools, we can really have laser focus in on the higher yielding streets to perform against our strategy. So, you might have noticed me keeping track of all these things manually. We've also got this toggle here which will show you the orange areas of actually areas that have gone up in value quicker than anywhere else in the suburb in the previous 12 months. The areas in blue are higher priced areas, and the areas in green are lower priced, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It just means it's priced lower than other parts of the suburb. So buy low and know that. Lots of toggles and lots of information that we can put onto the map. Every one of these icons on the map is a property that's currently for sale. So our search engine goes out, approximately 24-hour delay, scours the internet, brings it all back into one place for you, and then provides that as a full listing history and property there on the map. If something's not on the market and you're trying to analyse a property that might be in your portfolio already, you can add that property to the map and then do a full comparable condition and location assessment on that property and determine how it's sitting. There's a lot of information in those toggles, and it's there's a lot of clicking in and viewing on the map and manually keeping track of where you'd like to invest. I might just jump back in here and demonstrate these custom toggles right from the beginning and show you where the most in-demand property type is displayed. Where I've now jumped across to is the click to search functionality. We can choose our strategy, we can choose our price range and catchment area, or we can type in our suburb directly here in the pop-up. This is going to load the suburb again as just a demonstration of moving back and forth. We can add this suburb to our shortlist. We can save our configs of areas we're interested in and properties filters, and then load them up by default very quickly. So this is what I wanted to show you. The most in-demand number of bedrooms is 4. Houses are most common. Morayfield is comparatively high number of renters, and the crime rate, high crime, and Morayfield has above average concentrations of public housing compared to the local government area. So just a little bit of a snapshot. Even though it is low public housing, it's still higher than the local government area overall. But now I want to actually seek out and find the best streets to invest for that capital growth strategy in Morayfield. So we can click on this custom toggle bar here now that the suburb's been reset. Each of the metrics we went through before has a slider, and we can set our tolerance for each of these things. So left and right, we've got the minimum and maximum amounts and different quartile amounts within. We can, if we're coming in, we can actually preset and click on the capital growth badge up here and reset these toggles to our strategy that is recommended based on our research and findings that would work the most, that have the most upside for capital growth. However, we know it's the capital growth strategy is very conservative on the public housing side. We've got 42 areas in the suburb overall, and if we use a default capital growth strategy, it's actually going to limit it down to 29 based on that public housing, and spit out at the end only 7 recommended strategy areas. In this suburb, we know there's very low public housing. I'm actually willing to accept any level of public housing in this suburb. Even 11.4% in that area, street area, is not too bad. I'm happy with this tolerance here for occupancy type. 1 in 3 levels of tenants is okay, and it goes right up to 78% of tenants. So anywhere in that range is great. Anything lower than that suburb median of 30% I wouldn't be looking at. That leaves 22 areas overall. We know there's very few units anyway. We know in-demand houses are most in demand. Let's not touch the property type filter. Let's target potentially areas that have median or above in rent. That sort of 390 or 370 sort of rental mark. Let's get a little bit fussy about that, and let's only target the areas that have high rent and high incomes to back that up. And let's be a little bit more fussy about our yield. Let's target I'm just sort of seeing how the areas are adjusting. If we were targeting that 5% yield mark, which is above average, right on the median, we're going to get 4 areas that are now recommended. So they're our tolerances. We can actually save those. We can automatically apply them, and we can apply them to other suburbs as well. For a flipping strategy, it's a completely different level of tolerances, and these move based on those strategies. So let's apply that now, and let's see where these 4 areas are. And I also like to see clusters of them together. So that's also reiterating and amplifying the positives of the process. So based on all of our learnings and becoming this local area expert, we've been able to set our tolerances for these things. It's come back with 4 specific areas in the suburb to target and to focus on. Now we want to see and try and limit these 152 properties down to a manageable number. So I only want to actually see properties that are located in these custom areas that we've found. And I'm going to set it to 3 or 4 bedroom houses, which are generally, 4 bedroom houses are most in demand, but 3 bedrooms will be right alongside it as an assumption. So let's find the properties that are currently on the market that fit that bill. In these, we can further refine this based on price and bathrooms, etc. But just for now, let's go and see what's happening with the number of properties there. There's a lot of properties on the market. This sometimes takes a few seconds to apply, so I do apologise about that. Congratulations, Adam. He had a property in Morayfield settle yesterday. That's awesome. There's a lot of upside in that area, as I've sort of mentioned, and I haven't sort of stumbled across it tonight. It's across the nation at the moment. It's a market. There's a lot of focus on, a lot of upside, and a lot of alignment in those buy signals. So, yeah, very good job. It has taken a while. It's now applied those filters, and it's now only found 26 properties that are currently on the market, 3 or 4 bedroom properties in these zone areas. We can now order that list based on price, days on market, or discount amount. And just jumping out at me here, there's been a property in these real sweet spots that have been on the market for 201 days. It's been discounted by 8%. Let's check that one out as a starting point. Maybe a distress signals, maybe motivated vendor. We may be able to leverage days on market and discounting to further discount the property. If you remember back to the images, we're trying to assess condition here. It's pretty poorly presented for sale, to be honest. While the bones sort of seem good on the outside, it's a bit cluttered. It's obviously probably got a tenant in it at the moment. Very clashing, and the colouring on the walls and furnishings are very sort of obtrusive. Reasonably tidy but original condition. Bathroom. It's got a lot of stuff everywhere. So I'll basically be assessing this, between poor and average condition, probably on the poor side. But I could probably and with a bit more experience going through individual properties, an average assessment on this one based on the price and the socio-economic area. Our engine actually goes off and it looks at the sentiment used by the agent and similar properties in the area, and it will actually automatically assess the condition of the property. In this case, it's automatically selected poor condition. We can override that if we disagree. Sometimes we do disagree. Sometimes it gets it wrong, but it's a nice guide and it does help us in assessing condition well. We can see the full listing history for the property, originally listed in December, now been revised down to 275. So we can use this information to negotiate with the agent and put pressure on them and ask them why, the reasons behind it, and this is an indication potentially of distress and further discounting acceptable. We can see full suburb level statistics. Average for sale price has gone up 4% in the last quarter. For rent, sold, days on market, volumes, vacancy and yields. We look at all of these stats on a last quarter versus last year, so we can see a trend, and that's all presented to you. We can see all of the area level information as a bit of a due diligence and a tick the box right at this point. And then we can also jump forward. Now the engine is going away and it's finding the top 6 comparables for the property based on recency of sale, condition of property, number of bedrooms, property type, and then also distance away from property in question. It's going to be ordering those in order of how it recommends as likely comparables. Our job is basically, we can run with this list of top 6 and just take it as it is. I like to go through individually and remove properties that I disagree as comparables. So we've got a pretty tight range here between 245 and 289 as comparables. One's jumping out at me at 358. So I might start there and just check if that is a relevant comparable or not. So we can see it's brick, sold in June. Now I'm basically doing the same process of checking, nice outdoor living area, manicure gardens, probably a higher class of finish, but it's still neutrally, not overly primed for sale with how it's presented. Very tidy kitchen. So it is probably a higher class of property. This is average to good condition. I'll probably assess this as average, as good condition. I'm doing this quickly. Well, let's take time and let's own this process for each property. This is part of our process of becoming a local area expert. We can curate this list and we can remove comparables we disagree with and get that range nice and tight. So once we're happy with that range, we're now between 245 and 298 between 6. It's going to take an average of that figure into the appraisal side, and it's going to show us how proximity to local amenities and public housing will affect this property. Take this with a grain of salt. So you might, in talking with the agent, disagree and take off the weighting that's been applied. Remember, it's on the market for 275. The comparable analysis come back at 280. It's a little bit far away from schools and shops. That's come down to 245. Somewhere in that range would be what I'm suggesting. And it's our job now to either prove or disprove the adjustment for schools and shops in discussion with the agent and our further due diligence. Because, yeah, somewhere between those two figures, and I'd probably hesitate more towards the 280 figure, that's quite a large adjustment for shops and schools for this type of spread out suburb, where I'd assume a lot of people have cars. It's giving us the raw information for us to make our decision. It's giving us estimated rent and yield for the property, and we can print all this off into a report PDF to use as a guide and refer with the agent. So lots to do on this page. You can remove properties by the geographical area, lots of filters, you can save these filters and automatically apply them every day. So you're popping in, you've become a local area expert, you've got your custom overlays, you've got your filters on your property, automatically applying it, and you're tracking properties coming in and out of the market or being discounted to ready to pounce. And then you're only performing your value proposition assessments on those new or revised properties and no others. So you've got a very efficient process daily. It's giving you the confidence and the information to be able to act and to be able to purchase in these fast-moving markets. I hope that you found that beneficial. I'm just going to jump now to the slides again. So once again, please let me know if you can see things okay. I've gone back to the slide now. Quick investigation into the right tools. All of the questions, I'll get to those at the end, and I'm definitely, I'm on hand to answer any detailed questions about the software and our search functionality. Jumping ahead, I have covered off on this, but it does relate very directly to our buyer's guide to property investment and also the Know Your Purchase Strategy ebook. It's about becoming a local area expert, finding the sweet spot and assessing value in that sweet spot, assessing condition, make sure it's relevant to the suburb. So this is a bit of a synopsis. Finding valid comparables that are timely in a similar condition and location, having any location-based adjustments and ticking the box on those or throwing them out, and that's all to assess fair market value for the property, and then using that local area information, the listing history, the discounting amount, the comparables that we have and we agree with, and if the agent has used other comparables, if you disagree with them, to push up the asking price. We've got that information. We can put them into a difficult position. We get them and form that conversation with the agent, so they then do the negotiation with the vendor and not you. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to throw out the comparables that are not comparable. They are, a higher class of property. We're trying to have an accurate condition assessment, looking at listing history and leveraging that information to our advantage. So this is what it's all about, and this is a brief rundown of what it takes. Yeah, the Ripehouse community, it does revolve around our private member research, help and support, case studies. It's helping each other with all that to avoid spinning our wheels. It's about using these tools and increasing your due diligence process and making that more effective each day, and to compete in the markets as a professional. And it's about nurturing. So this is the third element, and it's very important. It's about nurturing each other. We've set up property partner groups with our community members, grouping into groups of 5 investors. And what we're doing in those groups is supporting each other to process the research, process our experience together, use the tools and have feedback. So each group discussion of 5 is moderated very closely by myself and my staff. We have private chat rooms. We have every 2 weeks we have private video conferences where we take each person through what they're doing and what they're trying to achieve. And then every 2 months we have a larger group case study night where we go through very advanced and intricate case studies. These groups are really good for the mastermind groups, so we're each holding each other accountable to what we're trying to achieve with our goals, and retain focus on those goals, to digest new learning, to support and advise each other, and to think bigger and really motivate each other to achieve against what we're trying to do with our strategy and our retirement and lifestyle goals. So I think this is an absolute core part of Ripehouse. It's not just the research, it's not just the software, it's also these groups which really help us process and keep each other focused on what we're trying to achieve. And also give each other advice to compete in and buy in these markets remotely, and give each other the confidence, and match make these groups are done with experience level and also area of focus, so you can actually be comparing notes on a daily basis. It's great for doing that. So that's all part of it. Part of the community, this is what a few people have been saying recently. Guy recently bought in Logan City over here last weekend. Came back and forth with me around using the software, finding comparables, Asking price was $289. It was too high. We had a conversation, did a condition assessment, comparable assessment, and came in at and actually negotiated down to $270,500. Donna and Cassandra in the middle there have thanked us and have found the feature improvements over the last few months is excellent. And Andrew purchased over on the right-hand side there in Cairns, had excellent yields. Cairns is another market with very good yields, and it seems to be turning a corner, and with investor interest focused on that. So you might get the impression, as part of the community, I take a very active interest in things, and I'm always on hand for phone and email and one-on-one Skype support. So yeah, the annual subscription, we are a subscription-based service. It is an annual subscription of $7.97 per annum. That's full inclusion of all the access to learning and webcasts, and early access to exclusive content. The empower using the tools, improving our due diligence and daily process, and avoid that analysis paralysis, and then rounding it all out with full access to our property partner groups and the support and tutelage there. So it's an amazing subscription, and to thank you for joining us tonight and all of the Property Observer special guests, I'd love to offer you a $200 discount on that price to bring it down to $597 per annum, and that's only available for the next hour tonight. So you're actually going to be receiving an email into your mailboxes pretty much now or very soon with that offer, and you can click through directly in there to our payment provider at PayPal, which is very secure. It holds those details and manages the account. You're able to do that. And as also part of this offer, I'd love to offer you one-on-one investment coaching using the software, what you're trying to achieve with your strategy, and we meet on Skype to start with, assess things, and I'm working with you very closely back and forth, however long and whatever it takes to get you over the line with your next purchase using the software. We jump on Skype, we go through the suburbs, street property analysis, we save all your filters, we get it all set up for you, and then we work back and forth in the negotiation and process with the agents and providing advice about how to do that. So it's all part of the package. It's all part of me being on board and helping and my staff. And that offer is available, as I mentioned, for the 1 hour only. You can also enable that offer at www.ripehouse.com.au/discount. So you can also jump into that screen outside of the email to enact that and enable it. Please scroll down. If you go to that page, there's a Join Ripehouse button just halfway down the page, a big green button there that you can take you through to. As another thank you, I really love the work that hotspotting.com.au you do at suburb level, at a regional level. He's got Terry Ryder over there has got amazing reports that he puts together that show you the suburbs that have got the most upside. He's got an impeccable track record, very good track record at finding these areas of growth. And it really complements what we do here at Ripehouse very well. So as part of the next hour special, I'd love to offer you a free report valued at $77 from Terry. We can work together and work out which region you'd like to be looking at, what's going to kick your goals for your strategy, and then we'll find the right report for you, provide that free of cost, and we can use that then as a basis of our further research. So that's also available for the next hour. Ripehouse, we have a 30-day money-back guarantee, and we have live chat, phone, and email support. We're backed up by PayPal as a payment provider, and that enforces the 30-day money-back guarantee because it's software that it is putting the power on our own shoulders. We are doing this, but we could also pay a professional buyer's agent in the market to do it on our behalf. We might not learn as much, and it's $10,000 per purchase, but that might be right for you. So if it's something that is not right for you once you've joined, that's no risk to you with a full 30-day, no questions asked money back guarantee in that special offer. I'm opening the floor up now to some questions. I've got a testimonial here which I might just start running here from Guy, who actually just purchased last Saturday using the software. But jump in now. I really hope you've enjoyed the content tonight. I love talking about property. I love sharing Ripehouse and my research and the software's research with individual investors, and I love discussing property and empowering each of us to really succeed and move forward with what we do. I open myself up, very freely. So jacob.field@ripehouse.com.au there. For any questions after the event, feel free. That's my personal mobile number, and that's the URL down the bottom there to act that discount for the next hour. So while I'll put the floor over to some questions now. If you wanted to stick around, feel free, and I'll be getting to those one at a time. And while I'm waiting for these questions to come through, I might just play this testimonial from Guy, who recently purchased using the software. This audio might be a little bit quiet here. Um, I'll just jump back in there, everybody. I've had a couple of you coming through with the sound of has been in and out on that video. That is available on the Ripehouse YouTube page and also within the subscription and discount page. So you can actually view that testimonial from Guy. It's the first time I've actually displayed that in one of my webcasts, which it was just very recent. It's very recent to the Logan City area, and it was a great example of how Guy's had success using the software, buying from Sydney into the Brisbane area. I've had a few questions while that's been going along. I do apologise if you've had the sound issues tonight and stuck around with me. As I say, going to be passing the recording through, which has the complete video and audio and also the slides from tonight. So rest assured that's coming through. Just to address a couple of questions, keep coming with the questions, jump in, and I'll get to one at a time and stick around until they're all covered. We've got Rod here talking about the data and how often it is updated. Good question, because it's based on the type of data. I did mention 24 hours is our search engine going out and scouring and bringing it together. That's the general delay. That updates then days on market and discounting amount for that property, and it also then goes through the full suburban updates, all of the the volumes, the days on market, the for sale, sold, vacancy rates, etc., on a rolling scale. So that data is kept up to date. It's an absolute point of truth for what's happening in that market today. Things like public housing is a different example, where it starts off, and we spent a lot of time with ABS going back to 2011 getting that data into these polygons and viewable on a map so we can actually use it. However, it is based in 2011, so we actually have a 6-monthly process where we go through each local government area, assess their public housing policy, how it has changed, and we manually then vet and update each area based on those changes. So sometimes, these wholesale movements of property in and out of social housing, sometimes it's one properties which do sometimes fall through the net. So when you see our public housing data now, 4 years removed from ABS, it's usually 2.5% to 3% plus and minus from what you can see there. But it's definitely a very good guide to assess public housing levels and make firm decisions based on that. I hope. So based on the type of information there, Rod, it's differing, and we do have comprehensive processes to make sure that that data is up to date to a point that is needed for that data type. Heath has got one here. When we analyse properties for capital growth potential, does it take into consideration the history of capital growth in the area? We have 3 years of sales history, for sale history in an area. Our main assumption and core assumption, Heath, is around previous growth is no indication of future growth. We haven't been able to see a linkage. Just because an area has grown in the past, there may have been demand and supply imbalance at that point. There may have been growth drivers that have now been satisfied, and prices now reached an equilibrium point and neutralised. And there's no indication that that previous growth is going to occur into the future. So what we look at is we look at buyer signals in the market today. We look at sales volume increasing, rent increasing, days on market, and rental yield to determine what's happening in the market now and looking forward as a buy signal for the short to medium term. So, you can view that yearly history there for capital growth in Ripehouse, but it doesn't actually take things back any further than that. So I do apologise. I've hit the 9 o'clock mark with things. I will be getting back and answering the rest of the questions individually with you. And I'll be forwarding through the recording and any other answers that are needed after the event. So once again, I really do thank you and appreciate you attending tonight. Hello to all the Property Observer guests that have come along. I hope you found tonight really informative and some of the content is something you haven't seen before. If I've introduced you to a new way of thinking and digesting property, I'll be really happy to know that that's happened. So feel free to get in touch and discuss anything that you need. And once again, thank you very much.